Hello, and welcome to my second video in my How to Code series. The first video is 10 tips to becoming a programmer or being a better programmer. This video is going to cover how to use the example code repository. All of the videos I make are going to cover code examples that exist in this repository. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the landing page when you first go to the code repository. Below is the README, which tells you a little bit about what this is, what sort of examples, where to find the videos, and the copyright. The copyright is made available using Creative Commons licensing, which means you are welcome to copy this code, share this code, use this code however you want. You just need to not have commercial use, and you need to make sure you credit myself, and all that information is there. So I realize this is very tiny, so what I'm going to do is zoom in. Now, if you didn't know this, if you press Control and plus or minus on your keyboard, you can actually zoom in on a website. And it doesn't really zoom it, it actually makes the text a little bit bigger. But this should be a lot easier to read. So if you have a GitHub account, GitHub is free. What you can do is you can click up here, this will say watch. You can actually watch this repository, which means you will get notifications every time there is a code that changes. You can star it if you like it, and you can fork it if you are interested in more advanced features. But really what it comes down to is down here is going to be the important part. So this is going to look very much like a set of files and folders on your computer. All the files are listed here. So the README is all visible down here, and it's all this information. Then we have the HTML and CSS JavaScript crash course. So this was a course that I taught many years ago about getting started. And if you click on that, you'll get a link to a Google Doc. And if you copy and paste that, so I will copy right now and paste that. And it will load up a Google Doc, and I will zoom in. So this document goes through the basics of HTML and getting started. It really talks about tags, it talks about indentation, it talks about white space, and it really goes in depth into a lot of different topics, or at least more depth than I'm going right now as I scan over it. So it's 29 pages. It's not a huge, gigantic read. As you can see, there's a lot of examples. This was a continuing education course. So this was geared towards people without a technical background who are trying to get into ebook development, which is essentially just a web page in a tiny little a web page in a compressed file. So this talks about all different ways to use HTML. It does go into some CSS and talks about how CSS works, and it talks about JavaScript. So if you are completely new to all web development, to all HTML, all CSS, I highly recommend you go through this document. As I said, it's only 29 pages. It is a fairly short and quick read, but it really it'll give you a good primer as to kind of where to start and what you're looking at. If you want to just dive in, you most certainly do not have to read that. So all the examples will be broken down based off of their directories. So HTML and CSS is going to host all the examples that are geared around HTML and CSS. So at this point, if you're diving into this knowing nothing, the words HTML and CSS mean nothing to you. So what HTML is it's a markup language for the internet, and it tells the browser, which is this thing I'm in right now, how to render and how to display the content within. So if you've ever used a word processor, so if you've used Microsoft Word and you've made something bold, well, there's a bold tag. So instead of having the code look a certain way, it has a certain code. So for example, this right here, this code is larger, this text is larger than this text. So this text is probably a header tag or an H1, and this is probably a P tag. GitHub does some funky coding with that. So That's not actually how the source code for this looks, but I'm not going to get into that too much. So that's HTML. So HTML is the markup and the structure of the content. And CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, which is really just a fancy way of saying the style. So HTML defines the structure. So think of HTML as your house. So HTML is the walls, HTML is the doors, HTML is the functional furniture and all of that. And CSS is the paint, CSS is the drapes, CSS is all of the things that make the house a home. And it really spruces and makes everything, it livens them up. It really gives them the style. So that's HTML and CSS. And they're so intertwined that you really don't want to be teaching them separate. So below that, I have JavaScript. JavaScript is a very, very different language than Java, so it's just kind of worth mentioning. JavaScript is the language that front end, that browsers will render, and as I like to say, it makes your code come to life. So JavaScript allows you to, once the page is created, change the way it looks and change the way it acts. So JavaScript can let you make a game. JavaScript can let you make interactive elements. JavaScript can track a user's actions. So if you wanted to see every time a user clicked a button or every time someone moved their mouse, you can actually track all of those sorts of things in JavaScript. So it really opens up and allows your document that you create with HTML and CSS come to life. And the last directory here is PHP. So PHP was originally a scripting language, which means that it was meant for writing short scripts and doing automation. So a lot of different task automation. It's come a long way, and right now it's a fairly easy to learn backend language that I happen to know very well, which is why I'm going to be doing examples in it. But PHP is kind of the guts that makes everything work. So when you see, an HTML page, so the page that we are looking at right now is an HTML page with CSS. But this page is not statically stored on a server somewhere. Everything is dynamically generated. So a database loads the data, and then some sort of script, either written in PHP, Python, there's lots of different backend languages, will then take all that data, spit it out in a coherent set of HTML and CSS, and everything gets loaded from there. So there's a lot of things you can do server side with PHP. So if you wanted to create a web page that saved data, so let's say you want to create a note sharing system, you'd need some sort of back-end way to store that data, and PHP would be the way to do that. All right, so in each folder is a set of examples. So at this time, there's a greeting card, the HTML basics, the HTML basics 2, and a README. Now, there hopefully are going to be a lot more examples by the time you're watching this, but this is kind of my day one launch. And we will start at least with HTML basics. So when you click on that, it's going to show you the raw HTML. So this is the HTML, the full and entire code for this page. Starting here and all the way to the bottom is everything you need to make this page run. What I recommend is you can take this, you can right click and then go to copy. I realize my video doesn't show that, so you'll just kind of have to trust me. Then open up whichever text editor you want to use. I'm just going to use Notepad because I think it's very simple, very easy. And right now it almost doesn't matter. You're going to paste in the content. So you can either do edit, paste, or you can Control C, Control V. If you're on a Mac, it's Option C, Option V. But copy and paste should be fairly easy. Then what you want to do is save your document. So you click on File, Save, and you're going to want to save your file name. You can name it whatever you'd like, but I highly recommend that the end The extension, the name after the period, is .html. I just named mine test.html. And then open your file browser. So you can go to File Explorer on Windows or Explorer on Mac. Find where you saved your file. So you drag your file from your file browser onto your browser, and it will open it up. This is not exactly the most exciting document around, but it's meant to be an example. This is the content of the document and the way it displays. So you've got a large heading, you've got paragraph text, you have more paragraph text, and all of this describes the content within. If I go over in, now I can take a look, and I can see, okay, I have my opening HTML tag, and I have a whole bunch of things here which are called comments. Comments are a way for a coder to write themselves notes so that they know what they wrote, why they wrote it, or to help other people who are going to look at their code later. Comments are completely ignored by the browser. As you see, I have 3 comments here, and it says this is a comment. An HTML document starts with the HTML tag. So I have all this information, but if I go back at the document itself, it doesn't have any of that. So those are comments, and they're very useful, and I have done my best to explain all of the code using comments. So this explains how comments work. Then we have our head, and I explain what a head tag is for. And we have our title. Now the title doesn't actually display in the document. That displays in the top in the actual tabs. Up here, my title, basic HTML document. I'm sure it's very hard to read. You're going to have to trust me on that one. But that is my title. So then I have my body content. The body content is what's displayed on the actual page. So we have the body. We have an H1, which is our header tag. We have a paragraph tag, another paragraph tag. We have more comments. We have an H2. We have a paragraph tag. We have an H2. So in here, there is no actual styling. Everything is default. And then what you see here is the HTML that is rendered, and these are all the default styling. So this is the default styling for an H1. This is the default styling for an H2. As you see, it's a little bit smaller than what's up here. So that is the file. And if you want, you can actually look at a history of all of the files. So in this case, the only history is that I added this. So I didn't actually make changes. So let's say there was a bug, or let's say I extended something or deleted something, or someone else made a change. You could actually see the full history. So we're back at the root. So as I said, there's HTML files, there's JavaScript files. Now with JavaScript, there's many ways that you can actually do it. One is to write the JavaScript directly in the page itself. And the other is to put a JavaScript in an external file with .js and include it in your document. For simplicity's sake, I have added all of the JavaScript directly within the page. This is not normal convention, mainly because it makes your files large and difficult to navigate. And also, if you ever want to reuse your code, if it's in some other file, you're doing a lot of copy pasting. Whereas if it's in an external file, you can just include all the external files. So I do want to note that this is not a normal convention, but my goal was to create every example to be self-sustained. So in here is the JavaScript, and just like the HTML, you copy it and you paste it, and then you can run it. If you would like, you can download the entire repository. So if you click up here on the learned code. So if you would like to download the repository, if you click on clone or download, this will give you the GitHub Repository location. If you are interested in learning about Git, there's some wonderful tutorials out there, but I think that goes beyond the scope of what I want. But right here, you can download zip. So this will download all of the examples, everything here in one zip file. You can unzip that, and then you will have everything as it is today. and you're welcome to make whatever changes to those files. And later on, if you are interested, you could actually commit those changes back. So if you create your own tutorials or you create your own examples, you can go and add those back to provide value to other people. So that is the GitHub repository. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them down below. I will be having new videos hopefully weekly, so if you subscribe, you will get notifications. Each video will cover a single example. I will be focusing more on the HTML, CSS first, and the JavaScript second, and probably the PHP last. So if you have an example you would like to see, if you would like content to be put in the README or anything else, please let me know so that I can tailor this. This is going to be this is a freely available course, and I'm doing this to teach people how to code and to get people started. So your feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Bye.